one day, about 4 years after the incident, I was watching an Oprah show, and it was on date rape and date rape drugs. And it was a story about girls who had gone to parties, had been drinking some, and then when they woke up, they were in a different place, or they didn't have on their clothes, and they didn't have any explanation of what had gone on. And it was just like watching my story, and that was the first time I'd ever heard of that or heard of anybody else who had any kind of similar story.
I think that it's not talked about like a crime enough. That guys and girls have to get the message that it is a crime. Just because it's not the stranger in the alley doesn't mean it's not a crime. In fact, I think it can be more damaging when it's someone that you trust.
I was dating my high school boyfriend at the time. We'd gone to college together. And he was having a fraternity party that night that he was working at, and it was a party for the community. So there were lots and lots of people there. Because he was working, I went to the party with some of my girlfriends and hung out with them for most of the night. We'd been drinking a little bit beforehand, but I wasn't drinking at the party.
When I was 13 years old, my father came home one day and informed us that we were being transferred to Texas. Up until that point, I had a very happy childhood, a stay-at-home mother, very involved, lots of sports, lots of activities, very happy childhood. It was devastating when they came home and told us that we were moving. So we moved to Texas, and it changed my world upside down. Found it very hard to fit in. You know, everybody had their groups of friends at that time, and just was very lonely, looking for any kind of attention or positive feedback from peers, and it was just very difficult to find that. So I started kind of hanging out with probably not so great a crowd, just to fit in however I could.
During the night after my girlfriends left, I was looking around for somebody else to hang out with while I was waiting on my boyfriend, and I saw a guy who I had known through several campus activities. We'd been in some clubs together, and we shared some mutual friends. So he was somebody that I knew, but not necessarily a close friend that I hung out with. I remembered a couple of times during the night, he had a cooler there, and he was drinking some beer, and he would have a drink from the cooler. He'd walk away, he'd talk to some people, he'd come back and say, "Hey, do you want a beer?" And I would say, "Sure." And so he would give me the open beer that he'd been drinking out of, and then he would get a new one for himself, which I thought was kind of rude, but I didn't necessarily think it was